Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Newsgram. It's the early 1960s and a passenger train is en route from Iowa to Chicago. It's carrying a young chemist by the name of Bill. His destination? The headquarters of the Sanford Ink Company in Bellwood, Illinois. It's there where he's set to meet Keith Beal, the company's head of research and development. Here's Bill.
Home was Iowa, but I wanted our kids to know their grandparents and their cousins and so on. So I went looking for a job in the Chicago area where at least we could be a little closer to the family.
Bill was looking to kickstart his career as a chemist, but he was a lot more than just a scientist. Bill was and is a family man. He was heading to the big city with hopes of stability, but it turns out his contributions will resonate far beyond his own family. Have you ever heard of the Sharpie marker?
There was a lot of interest there. It kept growing and growing, and finally I was on a train between Albuquerque and Chicago. We'll sit down for a meal with a group of people. Somewhere in the middle of the conversation, I dropped my little comment about my work developing the Sharpie marker. And there was a lot of interest.
I'll bet there was. Let's properly introduce our guest now. His name is William J. Green, chemist at the Sanford Ink Company and an instrumental figure in the Sharpie's development. Here he is to finish his story.
When the lunch was over, I went back to my seat, and I'm sitting there, and this young man walks up and looked at me and said, "Excuse me, but I understand you're the chemist that put together the Sharpie marker, and I just wanted to meet you." And that woke me up. I said, "You know what? This is a story that needs to be told. And not told just because it's a success story in business, but there's a lot of human interest stories that really puts it together."
Can you imagine being on that train, hearing Bill's story firsthand? I mean, I'd want to know more too. After realizing that there was a lot of interest in his work, he decided to write it all down in a book titled The Sanford Tales, and other stories, both tall and short. Just to clarify, Bill didn't invent the Sharpie, but he played a crucial role in refining its formulation and popularizing it as the versatile Sharpie that you know and love today. Here's an excerpt from the book.
No, the product was not my personal brainchild. There were several people who share credit for this product. First and foremost, Chuck Lofgren Sr., the president of Sanford Ink Company when Sharpie was developed. Then there was Francis Gilbert, the executive vice president of the company, and the man who turned Lofgren's dreams into marketable realities. There was also Walt DeGroft, the manager of new product development, and someone with a most unlikely background for the position he held. There was Ted Jensen, who transformed prototypes into assembly lines. And then there was me, Bill Green, an ambitious young chemist fresh from the University of Iowa. Together, we made it happen.
The Sharpie was developed by the team at Sanford back in 1964, originally as a permanent marker. Bill Green was instrumental in improving the marker's ink formula. His work helped make it more reliable and long-lasting on a variety of surfaces, characteristics that eventually turned it into the trusted marker that we know today. Anyway, this story is really more about the people and the culture at Sanford back in the 60s and 70s. And of course, it's about Bill, a fascinating guy with, at the time, plenty of other options.
I love to tell stories, okay? I'm going to give you another in here. When I took this job with this small private company, the Sanford Ink Company, also I took that job and then I got a phone call from General Electric, and they offered me a job as a chemist, being part of the team that was going to develop the color television tube for General Electric. And I tell you, I got to be absolutely crazy to turn that down, but I'm going to put my family first, and I'm going to go to Chicago and go to work for this very small private company. And I'm looking back at it now, I'm talking to you about the work that I did there is all over the world. and the General Electric color television tube is in the trash of history.
That's one way to look at it. The Sharpie is here to stay. And if you don't have one in your hand right now, then you definitely know where to find one, whether you're at home or you're at work. Bill's journey captures an era in American history full of transformation. He joined the Sanford Ink Company in the early 1960s, right when America was on the brink of massive cultural, social, and technological change.
When I walked into Sanford Ink Company, I walked into something that was really amazing. There were blacks from the inner city, and there were blacks from college educated, and there were also this group of Cubans. When Castro took over Cuba and these people escaped off the island literally at the risk of their lives, they gathered together in these flotillas and tried to get them to Miami. And President Kennedy had to do something with all these people in one place, and so he asked companies all over the country that were willing to just let him know, and he'd send them some people to join their workforce. So when I walked into Sanford Ink Company, I walked into an ethnic mix that included these Cuban refugees. And it was really a cultural adventure for me to hear their stories and get to know them. And some of those stories are in my book, and a couple really good ones.
Bill grew up in an all-white neighborhood. He attended an all-white college, so this was a real change for him. To his credit, he embraced it and he enjoyed the diversity. In the early 60s, this country was entering a decade of experimentation and bold ideas. It was a time when innovation and creativity were thriving in nearly every industry. And looking back, his time at the Sanford Ink Company was a snapshot of Americana that I think really needed to be recorded.
There was a cultural and ethnic mix that all came together under the supervision of some very wise and honest people. While we were doing this, Dr. King was beginning his career as promoting civil rights, and it was already underway at the Sanford Ink Company. Looking back on now, I can see it and understand it. Back then, I just experienced it, but now I can look at my experiences and begin to understand them. And that was really a wonderful, wonderful experience to see everybody come together that way, and at the end produce something that's now part of our history.
I think it would have been a real treat to take a long train ride with Bill, hearing his stories firsthand and talking about that time in American history. He also has stories about working with Chuck Lofgren and Francis Gilbert, the founders of the Sanford Ink Company. Now, Chuck Lofgren was the company president, but he says he wasn't the type to stay hidden away in an office. He was closely connected with the workers, and it was important to him that he understood what was happening on the ground floor.
Oh, absolutely. The fact that the president of the company would go walking through the factory and talk to an hourly employee was part of how he put together his product. And so one of the stories in my book, we got a brand new product we're getting ready to go on the market with, and the factory line is set up and running, and he walked out into the factory, and when he walked by the line where this new product was being made, he overheard a comment by one of the workers on the assembly line, and he stopped in his tracks, went back to the PA system and called an emergency meeting, and he shut down the assembly line just based on the comment of one of the people on the assembly line. That whole product got a brand new beginning. And it was an everyday thing, not just an occurrence, but it was an everyday thing. This was Chuck Lofgren, yeah.
What a great example of putting the product and the team first. A little humility, openness, and respect can go a long way to building a strong team. Bill truly cherished his time at Sanford, and you can hear it in his stories. Here's another short clip from the book.
As I think back on that part of my life, I indeed take great pride in what was accomplished. The Sharpie has been produced and sold for many years now. It has provided many jobs right here in America. Many of my personal friends from those days spent their entire careers producing and selling Sharpies and are now enjoying retirement funded by Sharpie's success.
If you'd like to dive a little deeper into his experiences, then be sure and pick up his book, The Sanford Tales. He says as he wrote it, the memories felt frozen in time, just as vivid now as they were back then.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. They're frozen in my mind at the same age and time that they were. They'll never change in my mind. It was a fun experience to go back and say hello to them again, laugh with them. We just lived together. We didn't work together. We lived together emotionally. Sanford was different to some of the other companies. It wasn't uncommon for a married couple to both work in the same factory. There were a number of married couples that worked together there. In the summertime, when the orders were the biggest and the workforce was all taking vacations, they liked to bring in the factory workers' kids that needed some money to go to college and that needed some money to go to get on with their careers and so on. So I got to know not only the people I worked with, but I got to know their families. This was really a unique experience. I don't know how you would create it today. I don't know how you would promote it. It was an experience that needs to be preserved and shared, and that's what I tried to do.
The book also featured some fun diagrams from the patent office.
My very, very good friend Otto is a patent attorney, and he started looking into the patents that Sanford had acquired along the road, and he thought this would be great material to put in the book. So he went into the patent search and came up with those diagrams for me. Yeah, and I think it really added to the book.
You'll also find wonderful first-hand stories, cultural reflections, along with a look at Bill's life growing up in poverty and meeting a very generous man named Richard.
He had a beautiful family of about 8 children, and that were all wiped out in one accident. And it literally shook the nation. Richard put me in business, and he was putting me through college while his own children were all buried in a cemetery outside of town. And there's something about this that somehow my poverty and his horrible experience come together to produce a product that's now used and loved by people around the world. And there's some sort of redemption message in there that I'm not going to try to explain to anybody, but it gives you something to think about.
Absolutely. He dedicates a full chapter to Richard in his book, The Sanford Tales, and other stories both tall and short. A book that captures the story of a man, a marker, and a well-preserved slice of American history. Bill's journey reminds us that even the most humble paths can leave lasting marks on the world. Thanks for joining us today for this edition of Newsgram from webtalkradio.com.